Hi everyone, my name is Irene and welcome to the Makings and Musings Podcast. Before we dive into our podcast, I want to invite you to check out the Makings and Musings creative community where we paint and draw together every week. And I have a very exciting guest today, so let's dive straight into the podcast and start listening. We have Karen Abend with us here today, who is an artist and illustrator. I'm pretty sure she lives in Italy, so usually she can tell us a bit more about how it is to make art in such a beautiful environment. And she is the creator of Sketchbook Revival, which I'm sure she'll tell us some about as well. So welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Irene. It's so nice to be here. It's really an honor for me to have this time with you all. So yeah, it's so fun.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. Would you mind telling the listeners a little bit more about yourself? Maybe how you got started with art, like if you were always creative or not. And then also, we're going to do a little bit of sketchbooking today. So I will slowly set up whilst you start telling us a bit more about yourself. And then, we'll dive straight in there.
That sounds great. Yeah. I love seeing your art table, by the way. It's so pretty. And I
I
have,
am.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I love creating art, and people who listen to the podcast regularly know that I always paint and draw with my guests, and it's just a really lovely way to get to know each other and talk about art materials and ease in. So yeah, I'm excited to paint with you today.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what you end up painting. But I've got my watercolors here too. You've inspired me and some stuff. So I don't know. I might try and talk and paint too, but I don't know how good I am at that, honestly.
It is a little bit tricky. I like to set people up for a challenge.
Well, it's a good one. So I'm excited to see how this comes out. But yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about my beginnings. I guess you could say that I've always loved creativity. I think most of us have a similar story, maybe. Um, and I definitely was the kid, the creative kid in my family, and loved, taking art classes and just getting art materials as presents and things like that so that I could mess around and play with pastels and markers and make things for my family like cards and collages for my friends as I got older and all those kinds of things. And then yeah, art classes here and there too, but I didn't really pursue art as the thing I wanted to focus on, as a career, let's say, as a young one. How about you? Were you always creative, Irene?
I definitely was. I loved making art when I was young and as a kid, and I used to paint and draw so much. And I actually considered going to art school, like to university, after my high school. And this is a long story, so I don't want to go into it too deep. But I got rejected twice, and then I decided to study law, and then I pursued that. And then only about 5, 6 years ago, I started to make art again, and then started to think about art as a career. And now this is my whole life. I make art every day. So it's definitely been like a bit of a circular path for me. Yeah, so how did it happen for you? How did you start making art like professionally? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, so the career I ended up pursuing was art conservation. So it was related in some way because I discovered I loved art history when I was in high school. I took an advanced class in art history, which was unusual for the time. It wasn't like a typical thing offered to my high school. And
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with it. I loved it so much. And I'll never forget when I went to Washington, D.C. with my family for a wedding. A cousin got married and I got to go to the National Gallery of Art there in Washington. And I was
Mm-hmm.
so excited. I was like literally running through the museum to see everything because it was all things that I'd studied that year,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the masters that you typically study in art history class. So
Mm-hmm.
I really fell in love with museums and art history and then art conservation, but I loved making things and using my hands as well. So when I discovered the field of art conservation, I was so excited because I could see how I could combine all those things that I love so much. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I pursued. And I still love that field and I still do it a little bit, but it's not my focus,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, now.
Mm-hmm.
Since moving to Italy and um, moving specifically to Sicily, then my career, and then having a son, all of those things combined made it more difficult for me to be an art
Mm-hmm.
conservator. And so eventually I found my way back to needing to do something with my hands because I think art conservation sort of fulfilled that need to, use my hands, and because
Mhm.
it's creative in a different way. But
Mhm.
anyhow, long story short, I ended up starting making art again, thanks to my son.
Mhm.
And then eventually that led to me stumbling upon digital art, and after kind of dabbling in a lot of different things, and got really excited about design and illustration, and started looking into that as, something to do. And I loved that. And I started, the first thing that I did kind of in a more professional way was create greeting cards and licensing them
Mhm.
to a company in the United States. So that was really fun. And then I guess that's sort of how it happened. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it's hard to summarize.
Mm. It is sometimes, isn't it? If you have to describe like a whole life and everything, all your experiences in 5 minutes. Yeah, I totally get that. But your your background in art history and your interest in that must be like like being in Italy and being in the surroundings of all these like really old yeah, most beautiful like buildings and frescoes and things like that must really feed your creativity. Do you find that your creativity is inspired by the area you're in?
Definitely. I think it definitely does. I think it is. It's hard to, I don't know if it's so, sometimes it's very on purpose, if I'm doing certain
Mhm.
things, like I've done a lot of different explorations in sketchbooks and starting Sketchbook Revival, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Mhm.
But one of the thing I love doing, like series in sketchbooks. I think you do
Mhm.
too, right? Like kind of themes that you really kind of dive deeper in. And one of the themes that I've done over the years was focusing specifically on like where you live,
Mhm.
and kind of finding the inspiration in the place that you live.
Mhm.
And that was really fun, almost like a gratitude to where you live, because while
Mhm.
Sicily is beautiful, it's an island, it's far away from things.
Mhm.
I'm from Los Angeles originally, and I lived in New York and Paris, and I love big cities. So it is a little bit provincial at
Mhm.
times. And
Mhm.
I have to, I've learned over the years to appreciate it
Mhm.
in different ways where I live now, and having this gratitude slash where I live, with sketchbook practice for quite a while. I don't know if it was like a year I was doing that
Mhm.
theme. That was really fun, for example, like really looking for the things that inspired me where I live. That's like one example that I can think of where I was directly, inspired by
Mhm.
the place I live. Not, and that had all kinds of things that allowed me to think about the places I've been where I live that I love. And a lot of things were like museums and archaeological sites and famous artists, things like that. And in addition to nature, those
Mhm.
are the main thing. And of course, food, because I do live in
Yeah.
Italy.
You
And
have to love the
holidays.
food otherwise, yeah.
Exactly. So those kinds of things showed up in that sketchbook, for
Mhm.
example, which was really fun. And then I've done things like a map. I've been more illustration wise. I did a map of, Sicily, which was
Mhm.
really fun. And I did a map of the city I live in. So that was really, so those are like some direct things. But in
Mhm.
general, I think, and then, yeah, my husband is an archaeologist. So I spent a lot of time hearing about archaeology. And then I do go to the places where he works as well.
Mhm.
And I did in my work as an art conservator too. That was one of the things I did, was work on excavations. And I love the Middle East in general, as
Mhm.
a region for culture and history. And that's
Mhm.
another area that influences me. Like I like a lot of the very, I don't know, naive things that you see on prehistoric art, like
Mhm.
patterns, simplified shapes and animals and people. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Those kinds of, like, even like, kilims, like, rugs that have those very, simple patterns. Those
Mhm.
kinds of things really excite me, like simple symbols. And
Mhm.
so in a way, I feel like that region might influence me more than actually where I live, specifically in terms of style. Because
Okay.
when you think of Italy, I think you think like, the masters and,
Mhm.
the Renaissance and
Mhm.
those kind of classical subjects, which is definitely not what I like to make. But in
Right.
terms of colors and atmosphere and more folk arty things that I
Mm.
find here, those things inspire me a lot.
Okay, wow. Yeah. Oh, thank you. That was really, really interesting answer. You really took us on a journey there, like literally all over the world. Um, I think you're right. I think you can find inspiration in the direct things that you see, but then also we now have so many examples of great artists in front of us, right? So many different styles that we can choose from like modern day abstract art to great sketchbookers to like the really more realistic Renaissance paintings. And I think sometimes it's good to sort of broaden your horizon a bit and try something new, and also to allow yourself to be messy. Because I know that sometimes when we look at these, like a lot of people who don't consider themselves artists, they look at these Renaissance paintings and they think, okay, that's what a painter should do. Whilst in reality, I really believe that it's more about play and emotion and allowing yourself to be messy. And I know you do a lot of sketchbooking as well. And it's not realistic that everyone makes these Renaissance paintings. And we might not want to, like I don't want to. So yeah, how do you feel about that? About sketchbook practice and being allowed to be messy and playful and
Oh yeah.
yeah, explore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think those are wonderful things about a sketchbook practice in theory, but there's some of us who are still recovering perfectionists, and that's
Mhm,
definitely me. I speak of myself. So my nature is I'm a Virgo. I don't know about you, Irene, but
mhm,
we're very like detail oriented, kind of precise as a,
mhm,
generalizing this sign. But I think I'm a good example of that
mhm,
in my way of being. And in art too, I tend to want everything to be perfect and detailed in a way. So I find that I know what I like, and what I'm always seeking to kind of develop my unique way of doing things is what attracts me
mhm,
to art practice and sketchbook practice in particular, because it allows me to try to hone my skills in a
mhm,
way that's also playful and no low pressure. So that's
mhm,
sort of how I've approached it, but I've experimented with many different things thanks to Sketchbook Revival. And I love the sessions that I end up being the most attracted to on that particular event, like creating with other artists, because that's, where guest
mhm,
artists come and share their favorite ways of creating a sketchbook. That's what the workshop's about. And so it's so fun to see how other people approach their sketchbook practice. And
mhm,
the theme of the workshop is exactly that: experimenting, play, getting messy,
mhm,
just being free, like getting out of your comfort zone, trying new things. And so I'm always trying to do that for myself as well. And I'm most
mhm,
attracted to the things that are the most different than what I usually do. You know what I
mhm,
mean? So I love abstract ones. I love, things that start with scribbles or that just
mhm,
mix things all up and you might say, call them messy, but there's some madness to the mess, always.
mhm,
Um, there's some, yeah, that's not what I meant. There's some, there's not the madness to the mess. There's some organization to the mess. I don't know what you mean. It's like
mhm,
somehow the mess is, makes sense. And so there's a way to be messy and have it, you know, be harmonious is what I'm trying to say. So I
mhm,
love those kind of sessions that help me explore that side of my creativity and more
mhm,
intuitive sides. But and I'm all for this art for art's sake approach, and whatever
mhm,
that looks like for you. I love it that it's so personal, and that then of course you can change your sketchbook practice at any point that you want to
mhm,
try something else, and it's your practice. You can do
mhm.
whatever you want. So right, I don't know.
I absolutely, and I think this is a nice segue in sort of talking about what Sketchbook Revival is, because people might not know who are listening in. But yeah, first of all, I use my sketchbooks in so many different ways. I don't have one style or one type of sketchbook or one material that I love using. I very often set myself a challenge. So, for example, a few years ago, I wanted to draw portraits. So I set myself a challenge to fill a whole sketchbook with portraits, and I actually carried that on quite a bit longer after that. This at the moment I'm in the middle of a challenge where I'm finishing this entire watercolor sketchbook in 1 week because I really want to dive into that. And so I'm really doing a deep dive. Usually I do a lot of drying in between with a hairdryer, but because we're recording this, I can't use my hairdryer, so I have to embrace the fact that everything is still wet, and I find it really fun to do. So yeah, I often set myself challenges, and I must keep at least 5 sketchbooks at the same time. So I have one for messy sketches, one for more curated paintings, one for more abstract art, one for watercolors with slightly nicer paper, and then yeah, so that's how I approach it. But I know everyone has a different way of sketchbooking, and also um, different levels of what they want to share with the world, right? Because I know you share your sketchbook pages or some on your website or in your portfolio. But I'm sure you also have pages that you don't share with the world and that you keep private. So I think that's a really interesting balance, I think, to find. Yeah, so there wasn't really a question in there, just
No, I love hearing how you use your sketchbook, and it's so cool to hear that you have so many different ones for different purposes. And it reminds me like, oh yeah, I have a lot of different ones too
Mm.
for different purposes. And I think it's fun because some of them, I don't necessarily fill up fast. And then
Mhm.
those ones, I actually brought one of those with me today as inspiration
Mhm.
when I knew that you were going to be painting. I thought,
Mhm.
I need something, a visual to get me started. So I grabbed one of those sketchbooks that I never
Mhm.
finished. That was something I started that really excited me. And I was like, oh, this would be a fun thing to bring today.
Mm.
So yeah, I love how you have specific sketchbooks for specific purposes. I think a lot of artists end up doing that.
Mm.
I think I'm trying to be more focused a little bit personally and like use just one, but I'm mainly focusing on drawing these days,
Mm.
um, and kind of doing a lot of learning like kind of revisiting the foundational skills a little bit,
Mhm.
like, yeah, line and gesture and then perspective and these kinds of things. It's sort of
Mm.
yeah, so it's been fun to do that. But then I need to play sometimes that too. So
Mm.
then I have other places for just playing, like where I do
Mm.
collage. I like doing collage, and this one that I have that I just talked about right now has a combination of collage and painting on it. I'll just show you what I'm using. I don't. You can see
Oh,
me, right?
great. Yeah,
This
of
is
course. Yeah.
it's funny. This is a little.
Mm.
I did these little
Mm.
collages with shapes
Oh, wow.
on Post-it notes with I
Mm.
love pattern design, even though I
Mm.
haven't done it professionally, but I love patterns in general.
Mm.
And I think collage for me is a fun way of exploring patterns. So I pulled this particular one to give me something to look at while I was painting.
Oh, fantastic. I love the idea of working on a post-it as well. I think sometimes limiting your space or giving yourself constraints can actually make you so much more creative. And I love that. I've never made any art on post-it notes, but I have like a little block of post-it notes here with like craft paper, and now I immediately want to draw on it.
Yeah, you should. It's
Yeah, I
so
love
fun.
that.
I love small sketchbooks for
Mhm.
that reason, like folding up my own from,
Yeah.
paper, like those accordion ones you can make are so
Mhm.
fun. I learned that on Sketchbook Revival. And then, but the one I have now is really, this one I was talking about is big. And I have this, I'm just sharing you my sketchbook, and then you're not asking me to. I hope that's
Oh, I
okay.
love no, I love to
Since we're
see it.
talking about, this is definitely
Mm.
a private one, I'd say.
Mhm.
But I'm going to share it with you because it's relevant to this. So
Oh,
I did
nice.
all these I want to show you can put the Post-it notes in your
Mhm.
book as you go. That's what I did. I was doing all these
Mm.
collage patterns, and then I did this intuitive painting inspired by the patterns. So
Mm.
it's kind of a random thing, very different than what I usually do, but I love
Mm.
this so much because it's you get in the zone, and
Um,
it's like, well, this is very much for me experimentation.
mm. Oh,
It's,
fantastic. Yeah, I love
yeah.
it. Thank
So
you so
that's
much for
what,
sharing.
oh, of course, my
Um,
pleasure.
yeah.
So
I
amazing that you're filling up your book in 1 week, you said?
Yeah, so this is the aim. So it's a little bit wet at the moment, but I'm going through this. I'm sort of trying to do loose watercolor landscapes.
Oh,
So yeah, they're sort of upside down now, but I was really happy with this one. Just lots of blue.
beautiful.
Sometimes the less precise drawings are actually my favorite. But yeah, and so this is my goal to complete the sketchbook this week. So I'm doing lots of loose pages.
Amazing. I love it. Beautiful. What a cool
Um,
theme.
and it was actually interesting because you said that going back into drawing fundamentals, and this is actually a course that I'm making at the moment. I'm working on developing a course which is all about drawing fundamentals. And for me, there are so many things that it's been such a long time since I've thought about it, like concisely, like really, because a lot of my classes and courses are more about how to be more loose and like freeing up your creativity and making a mess, and much more about leaning into that side. And drawing fundamentals is sort of the opposite, isn't it? It's going back to like vanishing points and like perspective and shadow and dark and light. And I find it a really interesting challenge to set for myself to go back to that part of learning to draw and try to explain. So yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because it brings back a lot of thoughts in myself of like, oh, why do we do things a certain way? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm finding it very, yeah, I'm really loving it. It's like, there's something very gratifying about learning like just giving yourself the
Mm.
time to learn that stuff again. I mean, I learned
Mm.
some of it not in a very regimental way, but I did take, some beginner art classes years ago.
Mm,
And so some of it's familiar, but if you're more like somebody like me who sort of piece things together as you go, I
mm,
think it feels nice to feel like to get some of those techniques and knowledge under your belt
mm,
once in a while. Just
mm,
because I don't know, there's so much wonderful knowledge out there and so many
mm,
skills, and I think whatever you learn, it's gonna work into your own work some way or one way or the other, right? I
mm.
mean, it's not like I want
I
to, I
agree.
know that I don't want to be doing a lot of realistic things because that's just
Mhm,
not what I generally like, but it's nice to be able to
mm,
do it if I want to,
mm.
So, and
Great.
then to feel confident with drawing, I
Mm.
think is really exciting to me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Um, so, would you mind telling me why you started Sketchbook Revival? Because yeah, we sort of mentioned it a few times throughout sort of the conversation, but people might not know what Sketchbook Revival is. So why, like, and I know what it is, but would you mind just quickly telling us why did you start it and what is it?
Of course, yes. Yeah, Irani was on Sketchbook Revival, so she knows very well what it is. So yeah, I started Sketchbook Revival in 2018, and the vision, as I shared, is really to explore different ways of approaching a sketchbook practice,
Mm-hmm.
and to do that through artists who share the ways that they like to create in a sketchbook. Where that vision came from was me struggling to know how to use a sketchbook
Mm-hmm.
or wanting to have a sketchbook practice, but feeling, intimidated by it or like not really knowing what to do because I was seeing a lot of artists online using sketchbooks and doing these really cool practices like 100-day projects or, 365-day projects or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And they were clearly focusing on something very specific and developing something that was their own and having a lot of fun doing it. But whenever I try to do it, I would get stuck,
Mm-hmm.
after a very short time. And I was like, I was just getting into learning about illustration and design and was doing things digitally, but was wanting to do things non-digitally as well. And while I'd figured out a way on my iPad that I really felt good about, on my own, wasn't having the same luck in my sketchbook, so to speak, because I
Okay.
was feeling like I wanted to be not digital for the sketchbook. And
Mm.
something about that, those two things seem to go together for me without knowing why or how exactly. But so that was sort of, came from me wanting to learn the thing for myself. And then I had the opportunity to learn how to put together a summit thanks to a group I was part of.
Mm.
That was one of the things that we could do, but I wasn't in that group for that. I was in the group for like more like creative support, just on whatever
Mhm.
you wanted to be putting out in the world or whatever your personal projects were. And when I had this, I was curious about summits because I saw my colleagues doing it in that group. And at a certain point, thought, well, maybe I do want to do something like this. Like it's
Mm.
totally out there for me, not the typical thing I would do. But once I had the idea, which became Sketchbook Revival, like the problem that I wanted to solve, so to
Mhm.
speak, for myself. And then I thought, well, if I'm curious about this problem, maybe others are as well. I
Mhm.
really didn't know at that point because it was just coming from what I was craving.
Mm.
And anyway, that launched Sketchbook Revival for me. And the first one I did in 2018 was a huge success. 16,000 people signed up,
Mm.
and it was amazing. And so then I just decided to keep doing it. I'm like, it's kind of like if it's working, why stop? And I
Mm.
learned so much from it. After that first Sketchbook Arrival, I completed my first 100-day project, and lots of other people. I got so many emails from people and feedback on the Facebook group of other people having similar experiences where things were unleashed for them. They transformed in different ways in their own creative practice, whether it be somebody who was blocked for years and years and years, or somebody who was, found the perfect right artist teacher they had been craving and didn't
Mm.
know they needed, this kinds of things. So many stories of different ways the event helped people. And so, yeah, I was excited to keep going with it. And here I am now, 7 years later,
Mm.
and still doing it.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Did you ever expect that the sort of uh like how it would sort of resonate with people, or how the sort of ripple effect of you setting it up, did you expect that? Did you expect people to pick it up that
No,
way?
I did not expect that. I really didn't know, but I was encouraged because when I started reaching out to artists to see if they would want to collaborate and be part of the
Mm,
event, I saw how many people were using sketchbooks for different things. Because I
mm,
hadn't really investigated it that seriously, honestly. I just, seen some things on Instagram, like wanted
mm,
to do it myself. Remembered being in an art class in
mm,
college where my art professor had us keep a sketchbook, but it was more like a place for inspiration that we were gathering, but like a journal kind of thing where we'd write, collect images, yeah, draw and paint too. It was sort of a mishmash. I remembered doing that, but it didn't feel natural to me to do that any longer. So
mm,
that was really that was my personal experience. But then when I started allowing myself to research it online, I was like, wow, there are
mm,
a lot of artists doing this and teaching this, and it's
mm,
amazing what's out there. So it gave me, yeah, I got encouraged that this was an area that was robust, let's say,
mm,
in the art world, in the
mm.
creative space online.
Hmm. Also, I think maybe you sort of started it at the right time because I think art summits are quite common now. Like there's quite a few sort of going around on different topics. And the same with sort of in the wellness, like for mindfulness and meditation and things like that. There's quite a lot of summits, but maybe you just started at a point when this was not so well known and people were craving it.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
could be. It could be. I
doing it the
really
right
don't
way.
know. I don't know. I definitely felt very lucky at the time that
Mm,
it went so well. But I think I also had that support, to
mm,
do it in such a way that was it worked.
mm,
The way that I was able to,
mm,
find speakers and organize it was a really at least for me, it worked.
mm,
And I don't know. So I definitely give credit to Amber Quaylamoni Bonici. I should mention her because thanks to her, I was able to learn how to do it.
mm,
And, obviously I've grown since then and, make it more and more my own each time because
mm,
the more you do something, the more that happens naturally in any creative
mm,
endeavor. Because I do consider putting together a summit another kind of creative endeavor for
mm.
sure.
I am, yeah, I think it's yeah, it must be such an undertaking. And also all the like technical points of bringing people together at the right time and making sure that, all the technological bits are working and like all these things, it seems quite daunting to me because I work alone and everything I do like is on my own time schedule. And I find it quite hard to schedule a podcast, let alone doing like a whole summit. So yeah, I definitely admire all the work that you're doing, all that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
that it's a lot. It's a big undertaking. It's not for the faint of heart. But
No.
even if you think, I never thought I would do something like this because it's not in my nature. It wasn't in my nature, but now I really more and more I find myself loving it more and more this work.
Hmm.
So it's really cool
Hmm.
to be open to trying new things. And
Hmm.
sometimes you just never know what's going to click for you. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
I love the fact that the main thing that on a personal level, what I love is the community aspect that there are other people who are interested in the same thing that I am. Because, like you
Hmm.
said, working alone, I was definitely pursuing the art alone
Hmm.
and taking classes online. And
Hmm.
it's really wonderful to be able to be in touch with people who appreciate what you're doing and who you appreciate what they're doing, and you share a common interest around
Hmm.
creating. It's just so
Yeah.
cool. And I feel very fortunate to have that, and it's very yeah, it gives me energy to keep going with my art practice, to keep going with the event. It's very energizing as well.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then to help people, along the way, of course, is really awesome too.
Hmm. Um, yeah, so what are you working on at the moment? Are you have any personal projects that you're undertaking or professional projects that you're working on that you're allowed to share?
Sure.
What's on
Well,
your desk at the moment?
I'm in the midst of organizing Sketchbook Revival 2024 still. So that is my main project at the moment. And it will launch at the end of September this year. I have it at a different time this year, September
Hmm.
22nd. So that is really taking up most of my time. The other thing I'm doing is I did enroll in a illustration course online
Hmm.
that is run by an Italian school. And because I live in Italy,
Hmm.
and this is cool because it's we meet live on like an online platform once a week for
Hmm.
3.5 hours. So it's really deep and we learn different techniques. And this is where my interest in going back to the fundamentals came from.
Hmm.
so this course is helping support me in that
Mm.
journey of back to the fundamentals. So I've been doing that all year. Today was actually the last class for the year because they take the summers off, which is really nice.
Okay.
So that's been like the thing I've been doing on the side for myself, which has been really
Mm.
awesome. And then on top of that, have I been doing anything else more? Like I haven't been doing that much, on digital artwork at all. I've sort of been on a hiatus with that, except for
Mhm.
the occasional greeting card, which
Mm.
I do for fun. And then when I get an idea, I'll create something. And then when I feel like it, I can send it out, for licensing opportunities.
Mhm.
But those are really the main things I'm doing at the moment. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's kind of a
Yeah. If it
lot.
comes back to me, you can tell me. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. I think being able to, or like carrying on doing courses and carrying on learning, I think is something that sometimes people are new to art. So a lot of people who listen to this podcast want to start art and they're really new to art. And I think sometimes people think, okay, you do a number of courses or you go to school and then you can draw and then you are finished. You are you are an artist, point. But it doesn't work like that, does it? Like it's continuous learning, and there's always more to learn and other things to explore and more mediums. And um, that's I think having that sort of beginner's mindset and that continuous learning to me that is so like I love it. How do you find it to be a beginner, to be new, to learn something new, a new skill? How is that for you?
Yeah, I really, I feel like I'm new every day. I don't know. I think beginner mindset is sort of my baseline
Mm,
for most things since I started this creative journey
mm,
because, I had a different career as art conservation. This is sort of like my reinvention.
mm,
And I think part of it is from, not going to art school and not feeling like I have a formal training in art. So I think having a beginner mindset really helps me be gentle with myself
mm,
and be more free and not worry so much about the outcome, like
mm,
not having anything to prove, you know what I mean? And not feeling like I have to compete with anybody and
mm,
being able to look at other people's artwork and be inspired instead of feeling, like comparing and feeling like I'm not good enough.
mm,
I think all the beginner's mindset for me supports all of those healthy uh, mindsets that support creativity.
mm,
Yeah. So I think that's why I like it so much because I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, I think for some people will look at my art and think, I'll be more advanced than them because, I've been doing it for longer or whatever.
mm,
But, for the most, I'm always thinking like I'm the beginner in the room, whether I am
mm,
or not, I don't know, but that's what it feels like.
mm,
And I like it. I don't mind that. I don't mind that. Do I want to master things? Yes. I
mm,
do. I want to get better. Absolutely. I love the idea of mastering skills and being really good at certain things because I think that's just really fun to
mm,
the more you master something, the more free you are to create in a certain way. And
mm,
mastering something could be, mixing colors and creating abstract things on your page. It doesn't have to be drawing something that looks like real life. And that's
mm,
generally what I'm trying to master. But you know what I mean? I think whatever you do repeatedly, you will master it in your own way. And
mm,
then you can also master things in a more formal way if you do want to learn specific techniques too. So
mm.
um, I think for me, the goal is always like I'd like to master things in different ways, but as a beginner, I'm on the journey of trying to master things without pressure.
Mm, absolutely. And do you have any tips for people who want to start drawing or painting or keeping a sketchbook? Other than checking out Sketchbook Revival, of course, because I think that's a really good source for people who are considering, starting a sketchbook and they don't know where to start. I think that's a really good place to start. But yeah, what tips do you have in terms of, um, yeah, where do people start who want to start drawing or want to start making art?
Gosh, yeah, I think start with one thing that inspires you and
Mm,
just try it.
mm,
Um, like the first thing that I did and kept doing for a while was this 100 Hearts project that I started,
mm,
which was where I learned a lot of things. And that was from the first Sketchbook Revival. And I learned things like having constraints. You mentioned
mhm,
that earlier, like where you are just creating with a few art supplies and a certain size piece of paper, like the Post-it note. So I was doing like little tiny pages. So like keeping it easy, I guess, is the first thing. I think the number one tip I'd have is like keeping it easy for yourself. So whatever that looks like for you, it's like something that doesn't feel intimidating, and then, yeah, so keeping it easy is the first tip. The other tip is keeping it fun. So something that feels fun for you. And the first thing that was fun for me, I remember, was using colored markers. I think because it was something I used as a child, and it was very playful, and I loved just coloring in shapes. And I was I was creating fun hearts and coloring them in literally and doing different things with them. And then over time, I got better at doing that one thing. They definitely got better when I kept doing a heart every day in a different way with colored markers. By the end of the 100 days, I was at a completely different point than I was when I started. And it was such a simple practice. I think it was such a good illustration of how you can start simple, a simple idea that feels easy, like a little tiny page every day is so easy, and doing this, what felt fun were these markers for me. And then the other thing is something that feels meaningful. So meaning the heart project was meaningful because I loved that the way I was doing it, it was inspired by a art therapist who did a session on tuning into your heart. She called it a heart check-in. And so you would literally tune into your heart and like kind of feel what your mood was for the day. Like happy, I'm sad, I'm tired, whatever it was. And so that word would inspire my heart, which was like, I'd make the heart look tired, or I'd make it look happy, or, what I mean? Just so simple. Like it was sort of illustrative hearts. And so, and that was meaningful to me because I really enjoyed that tuning in process and then interpreting it in a way that felt original for me, because that's also fun for me. So all those things, simple, meaningful, and fun. Like I think we all have our own ways of finding those things that feel that way. And then that will keep you showing up because you enjoy it. So I don't know, those are my basic tips, I think, to start a sketchbook practice. And then and I do also appreciate the small size of the page as part of that. And having, something that you can really do in a few minutes so that you don't feel pressured. Because I think that's what stops people. I know that's what stopped me when I was first starting, was having these overambitious ideas. And then at a certain point, I felt overwhelmed by my own idea. Because my own idea was too big for the time I had, and the energy I had. And then I was also started, my thoughts were starting to question and doubt things and like overcritical and all this stuff. There was too much time to think about things. So it's like, don't overthink it, just pick an idea that's doable, fun, and meaningful, and just try it for, a week or something and see how it goes. That's sort of my tip. I don't know if you have a better tip, Irene. I'd love to hear yours.
No, absolutely not better tips, because I think you're absolutely right. And I think people do overcomplicate things in their head or start overthinking or putting too much pressure on themselves. And I think making it small, in the sense small and easy, I think is definitely the way to start. Because once you've mastered the small and easy, you can do slightly bigger and easy, or like or small and slightly more difficult, or like things like that. And also people often buy these art materials that then they put away somewhere in a cupboard, and then when they want to draw, they have to go dive into this cupboard, go all the way to the back, get all their stuff out, get it all ready on the table. And then by the time they've set up, they've run out of energy to actually start doing any drawing. And I know that's how I used to do it. I had all these paints and stuff that I never used because I had to dig them out and I couldn't keep anything. So keeping it really easy in terms of supplies, or something that you can just like either keep on the side of your desk. Like I think markers that you mentioned is really great for that. Or a few color pencils, just a tiny little case with a few pencils is perfect. Or a ballpoint pen, like biro pen or ballpoint pen, depends on where you are in the world, is perfect to start drawing with, because they're cheap, they're really easy to get, you can carry them around everywhere. It doesn't matter if you work in an office, there's loads lying around. Something like that is perfect to start, because the more complicated you make it, the higher that barrier is to actually start. So that's definitely something that resonates with me. Keep it really accessible and easy and fun. Draw things like, don't let people tell you that you have to paint landscapes if that's not what you want to do. Even though you find other people's landscapes beautiful, if you want to draw shoes, draw shoes. Or mushrooms, or like something that gives you joy. Cats. If you want to draw cats, like if that's sparking joy in you and in your practice, then that's what you should do, and not feel like you should have to do something else because other people are doing it. Yeah, so I totally get it. I think the hearts idea is a really great practice to start with, like something small. Yeah,
Yeah,
I totally get that.
yeah, such wonderful ideas. I love everything that you
Mm.
shared.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
how are you getting on with your painting? Painting and talking at the same time. How's it going?
It's very slow. I'm admiring you. You've been doing this for a while, I'm sure.
Mm.
So you've got your talking and skills down, but that looks beautiful. I love it. Mine is very slow because I'm mainly not painting, but I'm trying. But it's going, it's going, it's going. I'm doing triangles. So inspired by that little collage pattern I shared
Mm.
with you.
I
So
think
it's
doing abstract like shapes, that's another thing that's really good to start with, because you can sort of do it without having to think about it, right? It's almost meditative, making patterns and making abstract shapes.
definitely.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've done more recently, I'm just remembering is I've been doing it for years now. I can't believe I didn't mention this, is more of like one of my current daily practices
Mhm.
is something I called a doodle diary.
Mm.
And there's different ways of keeping a visual diary. There's lots of people doing it, and
Mhm.
that's another thing that's really fun to do because it's meaningful because you're recording things from your own life
Mm.
that you want to remember and that you kind of got inspired by in some
Mm.
way. And then the doodling as a word, I really like. Some people don't like the
Mm.
word doodle, but I like it because it just is so playful.
Yeah.
Um, and so the idea of and it's I like doing these very simplified line drawings. And so the doodle diary has been something that I've been doing for a couple of years now, and it's so fun. And so it's like they're very small little notebooks that I buy, sketchbooks, and
Mhm.
my goal is just to do one a day,
Mhm.
kind of capturing one moment from my day, and that's
Mm.
it. I mean, it might have more, but generally the minimum is that one moment a
Mhm.
day in some creative form. And so that's another thing that you could do to just help you inspire
Mm.
something. So things that I do are like, and it's also good because it helps you work on your memory. Like, for either you take photos of things during your day and you draw
Mm.
something from your photo. That's one way of doing it. I do that. Or you try and remember something from your day and see if you
Mm.
can capture it from your memory in some way.
Mm.
So, and that's a really good exercise because you get really good at remembering things and like kind of paying
Mm.
attention to your day.
Yeah.
So if you're working on a doodle diary or any kind of
Mm.
daily diary that you're combining drawing or painting with, or any
Mm.
other creative expression with.
Yeah. I love the word doodling, because, as I think a lot of people say, I cannot draw, but they would say yes, they can make a doodle. Like doodling is very playful, very low berry. So I love it. I think it's a great word, and I describe my art quite often as doodling because I love to doodle. It's just, but I know that sometimes artists get a bit offended if you call their art doodle, so you have to be a bit careful about it. Yeah, I love the word
Yeah,
doodle.
I love it. I love it. It makes me I like it because it's whimsical. I like that
Mm.
whimsical energy of the word doodle. So
Mm.
I love whimsy in general. So
Yeah, I
it works
agree.
for me too.
I
Yeah, that's
agree.
fun.
And there was something else that you just said that I wanted to say something about. The doodle diary. I've started to do that multiple times, but I am quite busy sort of making art every day anyway, that I struggle keeping up with it. But I do think it's such a good idea. And I know some people who buy like a literal diary, like for their appointments and stuff, but then instead of writing it, they just make a little doodle. And usually the paper isn't that nice, but it doesn't really matter for like for a really loose, like quick sketch. And I actually sometimes using a sketchbook with cheaper paper can be quite freeing, because you feel less guilty if you make like a mistake, or if there's less pressure on making something perfect. If you buy like sketchbooks with really expensive paper, sometimes there's a lot of pressure to then make something great. Or so yeah, I think yeah, a doodle diary is a fantastic way of recording things in your general day. And I do you have you noticed that you look at the world around you different since you started doing that? Do you notice different things?
Yeah, I pay attention to the details more. I mean, I think as I shared, I was a detail-oriented person before, but not so much
Mm,
in how I was going through my day to day. If I was on vacation or going to a specific art museum or something like that, I think I was having the eyes of the artist on, where
mm,
you're like really paying attention to things. But I think it allows me to, yeah, have the artist's eyes on more regularly because of the doodle diary, because I'm really looking for anything that I find inspiring. Because in your day to day,
mm,
sometimes if your days are repetitive, which I think we all have repetitive
mm,
routines sometimes, right? You think
mm,
like I got to a place where it's like there's nothing inspiring happening in my day. Like I have nothing to record in my doodle diary. But then the longer I would just dwell on it, something would always come up, and even the banal things can be fun to capture in your doodle diary, because
mm,
once you start drawing it, so I kind of think of it like what would be fun to draw. It doesn't have to just be what's inspiring. What would be fun to
mm,
draw is another way to look at it. Or what do I want to remember? So even if it's like I saw my dog, found a ball. This is something I remember from
mm,
yesterday. We have these bushes. Anyway, there's a lot of balls in our yard, and they get lost everywhere. But he's able to find these balls in the most random places that I couldn't see, like way behind, hidden behind the leaves. I'm like,
mm.
how does he find that? So I find it so adorable when he comes out of a bush
So
with
proud.
this ball in his mouth that he dug out from the bush. Like that would go in my doodle diary. Because I
Mm,
think it's really funny and it's cute and I love it.
mm,
And then I get to draw my dog, which I really enjoy doing. So
mm,
or my son will, do something that I want to remember,
mm,
or I'll walk down the street on the way to the store and I will see a pretty flower, a
mm,
weed, growing on the sidewalk. So it's
mm,
like you start to notice little things that
mm,
you wouldn't pay attention to otherwise. So I really, when I'm not doing the doodle diary, I miss it because I
yeah,
notice I'm not paying attention anymore. But when I'm
mm,
doing it, I'm like active,
mm.
that part of my brain is active.
Yeah, I get that. And I think when you look at the world with artist eyes, you notice both bigger things, like the way the light looks in the clouds, or the way that, the leaves rustle, or like big things. But you also notice much smaller things, like seeing like a little wrapper on the pavement or something. You think, oh, that looks interesting. And suddenly, so I think it goes both ways. And I think for me, I always say that art is a type of mindfulness. It doesn't always have to be, but I think very often it is. And I think mindfulness is like meditation is one of the ways that we want to achieve mindfulness, right? And art is another way to also practice mindfulness. And I think that's way of being more present in the world and noticing things around you and appreciating the little things, or being more aware of them. It sort of slows down time. It makes you more like, it makes you remember more points throughout the day or throughout your week. And I think it's such a great practice. But me on a rent. But yeah, no, I think it's, yeah, and I think it's really fantastic. I should pick up my doodle diary again.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. I'm like, I have to start because I haven't been doing it as regularly as I was, and I really want to. I'm like, oh, I need to get back to my doodle diary because
mm,
I'm like you say, it really turns that part of your brain on. And then
mm,
I love what you said about mindfulness. I'm actually reading this book. I wonder if you've heard of it. I think it's called Your Brain on Art.
mm.
Have
I've
you
not
heard?
read it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, so I just started reading it. It's so
Mm,
fascinating because it's by, scientists who are studying the brain, and these studies have been going on for a long time, but
mm,
they're sort of gathering all the latest research
mm,
and also historical research in this field, and
mm,
how creativity, and they call it aesthetics,
mm,
but aesthetics, is a very wide reaching, so it covers all the arts, from
mm,
music to visual arts and dance, even nature they include, and so they talk about how making art is a form of meditation. And a lot of
mm,
some meditation experts actually say that art making is the best form of meditation, which
mm,
is basically another word for mindfulness.
mm,
So I'm learning a lot as I read it, but to learn about the scientific benefits, like we know how it
mm.
feels when we're making art, when we're in the process, when we're in that zone, and it's sort of the thing
Yeah.
that we love about art making. One of the
Mm,
things I think on a subconscious level, but then when you also learn about the science behind it, it's really fascinating, and it just makes you even more encouraged to want to pursue your practice and to keep going because you know that it does make a difference in your whole being. It's good for your health, mind, body, and soul. You know, all of it.
I
So
agree.
it really is good for
Yeah.
you to
I
be
know.
creative, and it really is your nature to be creative as well.
I
So
know. Yeah.
it's so cool.
I really believe that every single person is creative. I actually believe that creativity is what makes us human. I think it is like the fact that we can find joy in dancing, in singing, in cooking, in storytelling, in like all these things are what makes us human, right? It's like painting, drawing, appreciating beauty, like all these things that that make us who we are. And yeah. So that definitely think is something that we should encourage in anyone, not just in children, in adults as well. And I think it's interesting that we often think of arts to be like different from the STEM sciences, but actually in reality, there's a lot of places where it comes together. So yeah, thank you for reminding us of that, because I definitely think there's not such a big division as people sometimes think.
Yeah,
And
definitely. Yeah, I love. Yeah, when you were talking, I was getting the chills all over. I was like, oh yes, this is.
yeah. This is why I love having these conversations and doing these podcasts, because it reminds me of why I do what I do and why I love it so much. And it's really good to speak to other people who feel just as passionate about it. Because sometimes in my daily life, a lot of my friends and like family, they are in very different type of professions. So sometimes they don't quite understand my passion for it. So, but other artists often do. So that's really lovely to have these conversations. Yeah. How is that for you, by the way? Do you feel like you have like the people in your surroundings understand your passion for art and creativity?
Not really, no, unfortunately not. I mean, they're supportive, but I wouldn't say that my immediate circle
Mhm.
is that they don't do art
Mm.
or creativity that much. I mean, yeah, they're more, I'd say, I think sports is a form of
Mm.
creativity in a way. I mean, they're more, I
Mhm.
think that's the way that they pursue it, or, you know, listening to music
Mhm.
counts as well. But yeah, nobody else is doing art. And
Mhm.
um, I wouldn't say that they understand
Mm.
why I love it so much,
Mm. Mm.
but they see that I love it so much, so they
Mm.
support me.
Yeah.
Um, and then I do have a couple of friends who are creative,
Mm.
and so I can talk about that with them. But yeah, it's not like we're talking a lot about it. So,
Mm.
but yeah, I do have a couple of people that I can talk about. You know, we
Mm.
share. But most of the people in my life that are creative are through online
Mm.
connections at the moment.
Mm.
But I would like to have more in-person ones too. I
Mm.
actually just met somebody from the Sketchbook Revival community in person
Mm.
for which was amazing. She lives in Rome and I was in
Mm.
Rome and we had an email exchange. I don't know if you've ever had this with your
Mhm.
students. I'd love to hear, but it turned out she had roots in Sicily and then not only that, she actually had roots in the exact same town that I'm living in,
Oh,
which
really?
was just
Wow.
such
Mm.
a coincidence. It was, and I'm like, well, I'd love to meet you. We can chat more about this. So we
Mm.
actually met in person. It was so much fun. And
Mm.
so I have this new art friend in Rome, which I'm just so
Mm.
delighted about. So I'm like, I want to meet more people and from the community or just in general, you know, who are that
Mm.
I want to be more open to meeting people in person. I think
Mm.
I am to consider myself a little bit shy. So
Mm.
I might not have pursued these opportunities to meet creatives, but I feel like I'm at a new point where I really am more open to wanting to physically meet people and talk about art and just share common interests and stuff.
Mm.
I don't know about, yeah, I'd love to hear about your
Mm.
world and
I can hear an in-person sketchbook revival retreat in Italy. I think this is the way forward, isn't it?
I mean, maybe, but I'm not going to make
Yeah.
any promises, but
No.
yeah.
I am. I So for me the journey was a little bit different because I started teaching art classes in person, and all my students and all my creators were I met them in person, and we had lockdown. Everything went online, and there was actually quite a few people who I know still from my in-person classes who are still in my online community now, which is really wonderful. And then since a year, I have an art studio where I go a few times a week in Cambridge, so in the city of Cambridge, which is a bit of a bus ride from where I live, but it's not too far away, a few towns on. And there is about 20 other artists there who have art studios. So that gives me that sort of creative, like that bubble that I was sort of craving a bit of in-person contact with other artists. Because not just in-person contact, but with people who also are passionate about art. So this is something that I'm slowly starting to get more in my life of, which I'm very grateful for, and something I'm actively pursuing as well, because I think it is important, and it's really lovely also to create with people who have very different practices, and then to inspire each other and to see what the other people paint, and like it's not just painters, there's photographers and other creative artists as well. But yeah, it definitely has changed my personal art practice, because I do a lot of sketchbooking and like things for my courses and for my community, but I also like to make my own paintings for my own personal practice, and that's what I do in my studio. And being in that surroundings definitely has changed my art, I think, for the better, which is lovely.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. How inspiring.
Hmm.
And how,
I think we're sort of coming towards the end of the podcast, so I'm really curious if there's anything that you want to add. Am I forgetting anything? Is there something that you're working on that you'd like to share?
gosh.
It's okay if it's not. Don't know.
Um, I'm not thinking of anything, honestly. Um, yeah, I'm excited to I mean, I loved having this conversation with you. It was so fun, and I'm really delighted to be able to connect with your community. So thank you
Hmm.
for having me. And I just want to encourage everybody to have fun with their creativity. I'm sure if they're already creating with you, I know how fun it is to create with you. So I know they already are having a lot of fun. And if you're not, if you're just watching, I encourage you just to go for it, because it's good for you, and you won't regret it. And it will make your life a lot more, I don't know, multidimensional. How would you describe it? Like, I think making art, I love it because I'm never bored. I'm always, if I have nothing to do, I'm always excited to get to my art. And I never like am at, yeah, it really fills up my life with so much positivity and curiosity and just self-discovery. And I just think that I want to, mention that as uh, another benefit of creativity, kind of like it's a wonderful pastime.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, this is absolutely true. Would you like to show us what you've been making? I don't know
Oh, sure.
how
Yeah.
far you are in the process.
Yeah, it's not very exciting, but this is my original inspiration,
Mm.
and I've been doing my best just to get some color
Mm.
and triangles on the page. So yes, would I normally do this? No. Was it fun? Yes. At least I was doing something. It definitely relaxed me.
Mm.
But like now that I'm doing this, I hope to do, like, I just want to share with you this sketchbook again, because this was the inspiration for this. What I'm wanting to do is another page. So I basically would take one shape, one main shape, and explore it in different ways in a collage. And this sort of this was sort of the main shape, I think. Yeah, this little wiggly triangle, and then I added circles. And so then I would, that's what I was doing with this. And then I did this, abstract painting inspired by it. And so this one, I started a new series with triangles, and this was the first one I've done with a triangle. So I hope to do more. Like, I want to do a whole page of triangle collages and then do another painting. So this is sort of like a little side project that I'm exploring just for fun, because I love cutting out paper. If you haven't tried that yet, it's very fun. It's very meditative and playful. So anyhow, that's what I've done, and those are my final words of encouragement. If anybody likes the idea of cutting out shapes, it's really fun. I encourage you to try it.
I agree. I think collaging is, or we can just talk for another hour about collaging now. Podcast episode 2. Yeah, collaging is so much fun. And I just finished, I've got lots of collages here. So I just finished a course with people. The last session is on Wednesday, where we're doing collaging together, like lots of
Oh my gosh.
landscapes. Because I think a lot of people, when you think you cannot draw, everyone can tear paper, right? And then you can put it together. You can keep moving things around. either in abstract shapes or in something like that represents something. But I think it has a really lovely sort of low barrier, because as long as you can cut or you can tear or you have like a paper cutter, you can start collaging. And it really brings, for me, it feels like my inner child playing with glue and paper, and I love that feeling. So that's yeah, so it's funny. I think we're working on a lot of the same things at the moment, which is I didn't realize until we started talking. So that's really fun.
I know, it's amazing that I love seeing your collages. They're so cool. Like our styles are so very different, and
Mm,
it's so cool. Isn't that cool as
mm,
well to see all the different ways you know, some of the different ways you can use
mm.
collage, but yours are absolutely beautiful. I loved seeing
Mm.
them. So
Yeah,
thank you for
thank
sharing
you.
that. It's so inspiring.
Thank you. I didn't mean to like pluck my course, but there was a nice connection there.
Oh,
Um,
totally.
I think my painting is finished. I can quickly show you. This was my reference picture. So you can see I've sort of, I don't know if you can see the inspiration, but I went a little bit on a different path with it, which is sort of what I like to do with reference pictures. I don't really want to copy them exactly, but it helps when you're talking to have a bit of a visual inspiration to work from. I think similar as what you did as well. I will make sure that in the description, I'll list like your social media and your website, and yeah, to make sure that people can find you, because I'm sure people will be curious and want to know a little bit more about you, and yeah, connect with you. What's the best place to connect with you? Where
Yeah, if you
people find
go
you?
to if you go to karenabend.com,
Mhm.
then you will find you can already join a wait list for Sketchbook Revival
Mhm.
2024 if you are curious about the workshop. It's free. It's a free event, so you have nothing to lose. If you sign up for the wait list, you'll be on my email list, and that's like the best way to be in touch with me, is through email. And let's see, what else should I say about that? I think that's it. So yeah, if you know want to follow along, that would be the best way. I send out a newsletter twice a month and share some of my insights into creativity and what I'm working on as well. And I do a lot of doodle diarying in my newsletter these days, which is really fun.
Mhm.
And I also feature artists from the community as well, which is really fun too. So that's what that is. And yeah, just my website, and sign up for that. And then of course you can unsubscribe anytime. No obligation if it's not resonating with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'll make sure that I'll share all of this. And yeah, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a delight. I really loved chatting with you and creating together.